All right, welcome to tonight's edition of PG Live. I am Paul Zeise. We, of course, get after it every single night, and we try and get after it in a way where we can talk about the Steelers. And, of course, tonight was one of those nights where there was a lot that was needed to get done with respect to the Steelers because they play on Saturday. So there was actually a press conference with Mike Tomlin today. Tomlin today said basically all the guys that are hurt, which would be Pickens, which would be T.J. Watt, among other people, Deshaun Elliott. There's a number of other guys, but all of them, he said, would not be classified as out. So there's that. I think one of the things that happened yesterday when T.J. Watt got hurt, it was amazing how many people quickly and immediately went straight to, well, it must be an Achilles heel. It must be an Achilles issue. It must be a surgery because he blew out his Achilles, and then it turns out he's basically just has a lower ankle sprain. And frankly, if you listen to what Mike Tomlin had to say today, which he said, which was very, very simple, which was, hey, I saw TJ walking today. He looked fine. So I wouldn't worry about T.J. Watt. I wouldn't worry about Justin Fields obviously has some sort of abdominal injury. That can be a problem for a quarterback. But the thing about that is obviously Justin Fields is not your starting quarterback, so that's not a problem either. But at the end of the day, Mike Tomlin made it very clear that he was basically in a place where he was feeling pretty good about the injuries. He talked about yesterday's game, and I think one of the things about yesterday's game that I know that this is not a very popular opinion. I know it's a kind of opinion that basically I've had people tell me you're being lazy, which is silly. But the reality of the situation is this. I just think that the Eagles are a better team than the Steelers, period. I don't think there's any ands, ifs, or buts about it. I think the Eagles are a better team than the Steelers. So, yesterday, even with George Pickens, I know that we have to make all of these long-winded, ridiculous, let's try and figure out how to analyze this in a way that it makes sense. But reality, to me at least, and this is just me, but reality to me is I watched that game yesterday and I said, the Eagles are just better. And I'll tell you three areas that they're better. Number one, the offensive line. I think the Eagles' offensive line is much better than the Steelers. Not that the Steelers' offensive line is better, but if you watch the game, the Eagles' offensive line controlled the game. That's number one. Number two, and I think it's pretty clear, the receivers. I thought the Eagles' receivers are much better than the Steelers. That's just it. I mean, even with George Pickens in the game, I think I would have taken both of the Eagles receivers over George Pickens, and that was a big part of it. And then the third part of it is, if you look at it, and this is the other part of it, their secondary is so much better than the Steelers. It's not even close. It's just not even close. So the reality to me, at least, it's just me, is that sometimes we overanalyze these things and we want to go into, the minutia of the game. But the reality to me is the Steelers are a better team. The Eagles are a better team than the Steelers. And if that's the case, I don't know that there's much more analysis that needs to go on. That was one of my biggest issues when I was in talk radio, is that I had to come up with 20 hours of content or whatever it was to try and basically analyze these things. And it was like, listen, sometimes the analysis is easy. Sometimes the analysis is the other team is better, and the other team was better. Now, did Mike Tomlin, do everything, probably right? Probably not. I mean, there was a couple of things, especially with respect to, the way that he managed the clock at the end of the half and even at the end of the game a little bit. Yeah, okay. But reality is the Eagles were better. I mean, and really, if you look at Jalen Hurts versus Russell Wilson, I think there are a number of people that would tell you that they would rather have Jalen. So really, if you look at it, offensive, quarterback, running back, secondary, the Eagles were better. and probably in every other area or aspect, it was probably even. So when I say that, and I don't mean any disrespect to the Steelers, but sometimes I look at these things and I listen to what people are saying, and I say, you're trying too hard here. You're thinking too much about this here. At the end of the day, the reality of this game is the Eagles are better, and they're at home. And the Steelers weren't at full strength. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. I don't worry too much about it, to be honest. I just don't. I don't worry too much about it because I feel like sometimes we look at the minutia of things and we miss the big picture. The big picture is if the Steelers win this weekend against Baltimore, which they've won 8 out of 9, 9 out of 10, whatever it is, against Baltimore. If they win this weekend against Baltimore, they're going to win the division. And at that point, you don't have to worry about who's healthy and who's not because they're going to have basically 2 full weeks or 3 full weeks to really get ready for the playoffs. And so to me, I feel like it's really simple. The Steelers need to win one game. If they win this week against Baltimore, guess what? They'll have all the time they need to rest their guys. They'll have all the time they need to try and get better in terms of, figuring out what they got to do with their offensive line and even their defensive front seven. But they'll have all the time that they need. So it's important to me to be always realistic. I look at the Eagles, right, and I say they're better than the Steelers on the offensive line. They're better than the Steelers at receiver. They're better than the Steelers at running back. They're better than the Steelers at secondary, and they're at least equal at quarterback. And if that's the case, then what are we talking about here? Why are we so upset that the Steelers lost? To me, it comes down to now the Baltimore game. I'll say it like this. If the Steelers lose to Baltimore, they probably lose the AFC North. Obviously, if they win, they clinch the AFC North. But my point is, I feel like they've been able to be really good against the Ravens. And so since they've been really good against the Ravens, now at this point, okay, if they win that game, we're not talking about any of these losses because they'll be the AFC North champs. And I don't think anybody out there really believes they should be the number 1 seed. The Chiefs have found a way to win how many games in a row now or whatever it is. They have 1 loss. If they win one more time, then the Steelers are pretty much eliminated from the number 1 seed. It doesn't matter at that point. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter to me if the Steelers are the 2 seed, the 3 seed, or even the 4 seed. All you want is basically a home game. Now, if they lose next week against Baltimore, then we've got a problem. If they lose to Baltimore, they're probably going to lose the AFC North. And if they lose the AFC North, it gets a lot more difficult for them. Because if they lose the AFC North, then all of a sudden we're looking at it like this. They've got to go on the road in the first round. And if they have to go on the road in the first round, it all depends on where they have to go in order to play, in order to win. But my thing is, if they lose the AFC North, for the most part, they're probably going to be the 5th seed because they beat both Denver and the Chargers. So if they're the 5th seed, then we're probably talking about them having to play at Houston or at Baltimore. I'll be honest with you, I like their chances at home because if they win the AFC North, we're probably talking about a home game against Denver or a home game against the Chargers. I like their chances to win those things. Both of those games, I like their chances to win. If they have to go on the road, though, and I'm not saying they can't win, but it's difficult. And that's really the reality of the stuff. Byron Nelson here is talking about Detroit being crowned. Yeah, Detroit was crowned before they lost half their team. They're hurt right now. They're injured right now. So please stop comparing them to the Steelers. At the end of the day, the Lions are one of the best teams. The Bills are one of the best teams. I don't know about the Chiefs. I need your input on the Chiefs, because at the end of the day, the Chiefs, to me, they seem to be able to win games because they've got a great quarterback and they find ways to win. But even yesterday, think about it. You get 6 turnovers from the other team. 6. And you only win 21-7? You only win by 14 points? I just don't know about the Chiefs. Like I said, I think one of the biggest things is, at least to me, is that the Chiefs are resourceful. They've got the best quarterback. They find ways to win, and so you got to beat them. And they can, and the more they continue to win, the more likely it is that you're going to have to go to Kansas City and win. But the reality is, man, they just don't feel like, to me, like one of the best teams. Like, I watch the Bills, I watch the Lions, I watch some of these other teams, the Eagles even, and I'm like, boy, they do a lot of things that make you feel like that is one of the best teams. The Chiefs, on the other hand, again, you got 6 turnovers yesterday. 6. If you're the Chiefs, 6 turnovers in the old days, the last 3 or 4 years, 6 turnovers means you probably are scoring 40-plus points, as opposed to what you did yesterday. And I know that the weather wasn't great in Cleveland, but still, you got 6 turnovers, and all you could muster was 21 points. I mean, I just have to worry. I just have to wonder about the Chiefs. And I look at it like from the standpoint of this, and that is, there are probably some other teams that are tougher matchups, than the Steelers than the Chiefs for the Steelers. But think about this. Patrick Mahomes had 159 yards passing yesterday. And I know he got hurt, but, I mean, basically, if you think about it, he played enough that he should have more than that. But the reality is, if you are a team, and I'm looking at it right now, okay, you're a team that has 6 turnovers, plus 6 in turnovers, by the way. I got to be honest with you. You got to win the game by more than 21-7. So I look at the teams that are out there for the Steelers to beat. And I have to basically say that when I look at the teams, when it comes to, the Steelers, the teams that I worry about, Buffalo and Baltimore. And I know they've beaten Baltimore a bunch, they've won against Baltimore a lot more than they've lost in recent years. But Baltimore, to me, is an explosive offense that if the game turns into a game where, you have to go up and down the field, I don't know if the Steelers can win that kind of game. But against the Chiefs, you look at it, the Chiefs were plus 6 yesterday in turnovers against the Browns, and they only won 21-7. That should be alarming if you're a Chiefs fan. By the same token, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, and if you've got Patrick Mahomes, I got to be honest with you, if you got Patrick Mahomes and then nobody else does, then I think you're in a pretty good shape. So to me, the Steelers, I look at the Steelers and basically say, let's go with yesterday's game. People are, going to talk about some of the clock management stuff. They're going to talk about some of the other things. I'll be honest with you. I thought the best unit on the field were with the Eagles' offensive line. They basically dominated the game. And if you give Jaylen Hurts that kind of time to throw it, I just don't know that the Steelers are good enough on the back end to stop them. One of the things about the Steelers, to me at least, they have to get pressure on the quarterback. If they don't get pressure on the quarterback, they're just not capable of winning games. That's just me. I feel like it's one of those things where if you're not capable of going out and basically getting pressure on the quarterback, if you're the Steelers, when you look at Joey Porter Jr., you look at Dante Jackson, James Pierre played a lot yesterday, Cam Sutton, that group is just not that good, period. That group is just not that good. And I think when you can block the Steelers' front seven, you give yourself a real legitimate opportunity to pick that team apart. Byron Nelson says Chiefs have no receivers and they win. Yeah, okay. So we're going to compare anybody to Patrick Mahomes? Is that what we're doing now? Come on, man. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. He's the only reason that team is even relevant, I'll be honest. And so I feel like, to me, let's be realistic. Why is it so hard for people to be realistic? And I think that's the thing that bothers me the most with this Steelers team. Let's not compare the receivers to what the Chiefs have, because the Chiefs have the best guy maybe that's ever done it playing quarterback. Period. So, I mean, again, I don't know that the Chiefs – okay, Byron Nelson, are you really comparing Russell Wilson to Patrick Mahomes? The best player – some people think the best player that maybe have ever done it at quarterback to Russell Wilson, who is a borderline Hall of Famer. I think he should be a Hall of Famer. I don't know if he's a first time or, a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I think he's a Hall of Famer. He's still not Patrick Mahomes. Could we stop comparing that? The reality is this. I looked at the Eagles game yesterday and I threw it out the window. And the reason I threw it out the window is because they were on the road against a team that's probably better than them. And if you're on the road against a team that's probably better than you, more often than not, you're going to lose the game. And I think that's what people need to figure out. It's not a bad loss. It's not a loss that I would even spend all that much time with. In fact, I'm not going to spend that much time with, because I expected them to lose. I do. I did. And I think that's one of those things that when you look at the Steelers, what concerns me going into the playoffs is this. What concerns me is that the Steelers, if you block their front seven, meaning really you block their outside linebackers, but if you block their front seven, you can pick them apart because they really are not that good in coverage. Period. That's the problem. And I think that's what we saw yesterday. The Eagles had two 100-yard receivers, and mostly because both of those guys are better than the Steelers guys that were covering them. And Joey Porter Jr., I know we love him because he's a Penn State guy and his dad was an all-time, linebacker on a team that won a Super Bowl. And so we overrate Joey Porter Jr., but the reality is he's got to get better. And if he's your best corner, you're probably not good enough at corner. I mean, I asked this yesterday during my chat, and I'll ask it again. Why does this guy, he's always woofing about something? But reality is he's just kind of okay. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's good. I mean, he's good, but I don't think he's better than good right now. And he makes a lot of mistakes. So when you play against a team like the Eagles with two legitimate receivers, I'll be honest with you, you better be able to get home and sack the quarterback, because if you don't, you're probably going to have a problem. Now, the question becomes, who in the playoffs might the Steelers face where that will still become an issue? Obviously, Mahomes and Josh Allen are that good, but after that, I just don't know. I mean, I expect the Steelers probably to win this weekend against the Ravens, figure out a way to beat them. And if they figure out a way to beat them, they win the AFC North. Then they can spend the next 2 weeks relaxing, getting healthy, getting better, and worry about the playoffs when they get to playoffs. But here's the thing. If they win the AFC North, they're going to be the 3 seed, which almost assuredly means they're going to play the Chargers or the Broncos in the first round. I think they're better than both of those teams, period. So let's not panic because, again, as I said yesterday on Twitter after the game, and I said this with Aaron, with Adam after the game, when you look at the Steelers, okay, they're better than pretty much every team. If you want to tell me the Bills are better, I'll listen to it. You want to tell me the Eagles and the Lions are better, I'll listen to it. You want to tell me that the Chiefs, only because they have Patrick Mahomes, are better? I'll listen to it. But other than those four teams, I'm not going to listen to you tell me that any of these other teams are better than the Steelers. Eagles, Lions, Bills, and only because Patrick Mahomes plays for the Chiefs, the Chiefs. So you take those four out of the equation. Okay, now the Steelers probably are going to have to play somebody like the Chargers or the Broncos in the first round. And then in the second round, we'll see what happens when they play likely the Bills. Now, if they lose this week, it's different. If they lose this week, it's a different story because now you're talking about perhaps having to go on the road and play against the Ravens in the playoffs. I mean, I can't stress enough to people how important this game this weekend really is for the Steelers. Can't stress enough because if you lose to the Ravens and you lose control of the AFC North, now all of a sudden we're talking about a completely different animal when it comes to the playoffs. Because if you lose the AFC North, you're talking about going on the road and perhaps maybe even playing at Baltimore. Period. It's that critical this weekend. The Steelers have to beat the Ravens. And if they don't, then I think that what we're talking about is a team that's going to have to go on the road and probably play in a hostile environment against a better team in the playoffs. And if that happens, maybe we're talking about 8 years in a row without a playoff win. So I feel like when we talk about the Steelers this week, forget about the Eagles game. I really believe the Eagles are just better. They played better. The Steelers were a little shorthanded, all that other stuff. This week is 100% the season. Because I think if they lose this week to the Ravens, they're probably going to lose the AFC North. And if they lose the AFC North, we're talking about them having to basically go on the road and find a way to win a playoff game on the road. That's why all these conspiracy theories that I've heard, well, they're holding this guy back or they're holding that guy back or this guy's injured or that guy's in. All that stuff to me is all BS. Period. And it's all BS because they know they have to win this week. They know they have to find a way to win the game this weekend in order to win the AFC North, which I think seriously, if you look at what their recent history is against the Ravens, I'm not sure why you would think that they couldn't go out and win the AFC North. But this is one of those things where it is basically an all-win, all or nothing type of situation for the Steelers. They're going to either win, they're going to go all out, they're going to try and win. Because if they win, then they're going to win the AFC North. Then they can rest everybody. Then all the conspiracies about guys with soft tissue, injuries, and all that other stuff, that'll all become reality. But the reality now is they have to win this weekend, which is why if Pickens is close, they're going to basically play him. If TJ Watt is close, they're going to play him. You're right? I mean, if Deshaun Elliott is close, they're going to play him. And the reason they're going to play these guys is because they have to win this game. Regardless of what happened yesterday, there's way too much time being spent on the analysis of that game. The Eagles' offensive line dominated the game. Their two receivers dominated the Steelers, and they won the game because they were the better team. But it doesn't matter. That game doesn't matter. Go win this weekend. And if you win this weekend, you win the AFC North, number one. Number two, you have basically 3 weeks to rest all your guys to make sure when you play in the playoffs, you are healthy, rested, ready to go. Period. That's the reality of the situation. So don't get caught up in all the other stuff. Don't get caught up in the minutia of, well, Mike Tomlin didn't call a timeout, or he did this, or he didn't do that right, or all the other stuff. It does not matter. What matters is the Steelers winning on Saturday, actually. If they win on Saturday, they win the AFC North. They are able then, for the next 3 weeks, to dictate how they handle their personnel. They'll get guys healthy. They'll get them rested. They'll get guys that are ready to play. They'll get some guys reps. All those things will come into play if they win on Saturday. Now, if they lose, then basically Baltimore probably takes control of the division. But it's one of those things where then you just have to keep playing. You got the Chiefs and then the Bengals after that. And you've got to keep playing, and you just got to try and get better at what you're doing and hope that the Ravens lose a game. But the reality is, if you can just beat the Ravens, you put yourself in a situation where now all of a sudden you don't have to worry at all about what happens the next couple of weeks, and you can sort of set your lineup up and be ready for the playoffs. But don't read too much into yesterday. It's just, to me, if you don't read too much into yesterday, you're probably in a much better place, because the reality is yesterday, the absolute really truth of yesterday is the Eagles are better than the Steelers. And so, someone asked about Roman Wilson. He's out for the year. He's not going to be a factor. But to me, if you're the Steelers, listen, just win this weekend. Just win this weekend. And if you win this weekend against the Baltimore, you win the division, nothing else matters. You weren't going to be the number one seed because the Chiefs seem to find a way to win every single week. And quite frankly, you've got 4 losses now. The Chiefs only have 1. The Chiefs only have 1, which means if they win one more game, you're done in terms of the number one seed. And that's okay, because the reality is you were never going to win the number one seed as well. Go beat Baltimore. And if you beat Baltimore, then everything else that falls into place is going to fall in place. And you win the AFC North. You'll be the 3 seed in the AFC. You'll play either Denver or the Chargers. You'll get a chance to win a playoff game, and then you'll go from there. But the reality is we sit here and we analyze way too much and overanalyze way too much. And then we wonder why, right? It's just not nearly enough from the standpoint of, you know what? Sometimes the analysis is the Steelers just aren't quite as good as the team they played. And that's really what I'm trying to tell people, and they don't want to hear it. They want to come up with every other reason why the Steelers lost. I just think the Eagles are better. Their offensive line is better. Their secondary is better. Their quarterback is at least as good, if not better. Their running backs are better. The receivers are better. The Eagles are a better football team than the Steelers. And if you play them at Acrisure Stadium or on a neutral site, maybe it's a closer game, but you play a better team on their field, you lose by 2 touchdowns. Period. You lose by 2 touchdowns. Game is still on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street. Archie's in the south side. Archie's, the home of the 80-cent wings, Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So if you get down there, say hello to Archie. Tell him that you want tell him that you want the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich, but also tell him that Paul Zeise sent you. Obviously, on Sundays they have every single game from the day, from the first game at 1:00 till after the last game. So if you want to go down and have a good time, get down to Archie's, and you will enjoy yourself. Archie's 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday. I will see you there next Monday night if you want to come down. It is Paul Zeise. It is basically the live Post-Gazette Live. We do it every single night at 5:00. We'll do it again tomorrow, and we will break down the Ravens game. Until then, have a good night.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.